Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino.
Hey, we got to thank the fans. They've been spreading the word and getting the message out there, my friend.
That's right, and we couldn't do it without them.
And make sure that you tell everybody that you heard it here first.
That's right, because most of the time you will.
Yes,
and we're going to take a pause for the cause. Come right back with our guest of the week, Mr. Ron Sperzel.
Hey, this is Di Pritchard from Rose Todu, and you are listening to Amps and Axes.
All right, we are back, as promised, with our guest of the week, Mr. Ron Sperzel of Sperzel Tuning Keys. Ron, how are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks for being on with us.
Now, you know me.
You're more than welcome.
You got a story.
I got a story. I got a great story, and our laptop just rebooted. That's nice.
Okay.
So here's the thing. You know, I'm possibly the laziest guitar player on the planet. And for years,
like most of them are.
Well, for years,
that's why they got guitar techs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately,
that's why we don't.
I was not in that category.
Right.
So I thought, for years, I dreaded putting strings on a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I just did. It was like, how am I going to, what? And there was no internet.
Right.
So it's like, do I put 80 windings? And you always thought more had to be more, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know the proper way to do it.
No.
Like everybody said, do it this way or do it this way.
Yeah.
You never know.
So then in one of the...
And what they didn't know is with the windings is 90% of the reason you come out of tune because they climb over and they cross and they fall into the valley of the next wind.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
And when you strum and that vibration that moves that string a little bit, that's when you go out of tune, because if it doesn't ride perfectly in the groove of the string it's following, that's where the problem lies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm in one of the guitar magazines one day, and I see these tuners. And I go, oh, my God, from the heavens above, finally somebody has now, and it was my quest, right? And it was, God, I don't even know what year, probably 90... I don't know, maybe like
the early 90s.
It might have been early 90s, right? I went and bought a set, and I put them on a Charvel that I had.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, so this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life. And then you guys were still working with Carvin at the time, and in 97, I bought my Carvin, and it came with them.
Wow.
And I was like, and it's been locking gears ever since.
No, so your Ibanez, you said Ibanez was the first one?
No, Charvel. My Charvel was...
Charvel, I'm sorry.
I put them on there.
But it didn't have a locking nut, obviously.
No, it did.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, I hated putting strings on guitars that much.
Wow.
Well, yeah, that was actually kind of like overkill once my dad developed the locking tuner. And actually it came out, it was patented in 1982.
Oh, wow.
And we were at the first show in 1983. And that was the whole premise of his developing this thing, because he was the first man in the industry to actually listen to the guitar player like you that had trouble with not being able to keep it in tune. And so he listened to people, and he developed the trim lock, which that's the whole thing. You take the string, you pull it all the way through, you pull it tight, you run up the thumb screw, it locks the string to the post, and within a half turn or no more than one full turn, you're in tune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which made restringing a snap.
Oh.
I mean...
Yeah, and when you're out there and you're by yourself and you don't have that roadie, That's when it becomes, because you know, if you broke a string and you wanted to use that guitar, regular post, it's gonna take a little bit of time. You got to stretch it. You got to do all this stuff. With this, you just pull it through. You clamp.
Start off. You got to unwind it.
Yeah,
you got to unwind it. You don't even have to do that with these.
No.
Yeah, right.
And you had to carry that little winder with you.
Oh yeah.
I haven't even had one of those in years. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I had one. Honestly,
you do locking on everything.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But the cool part, and we're going to get to history. Is the new stuff, and we'll let you talk about that. But Jeff is going to do his thing.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we got to know. I always like to take our guest in the Wayback Machine. Now, this is kind of a Wayback by proxy kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But I like to jump in the Wayback Machine and find out where our guests were born and raised and how they got into this music business and whatever they do, whether they play or manufacture or produce or something. So
that's very good.
Ron, give us a little history, and if you would be so kind to start with your dad, which is where the company started. So however far back you can remember, we'd love some history.
Okay, yeah, I can do that for you. I mean, I hope you don't get too bored. If you fall asleep, just kind of wake up a little bit. Anyway, we all started in Cleveland, Ohio, and everything is made right here in Cleveland, Ohio, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city. And the way my dad started out is he was a machinist at heart. In fact, we were all machinists because he taught us the trade. And he used to make form tools and everything for a company back then called Dill Manufacturing that made all the tire valves for all the cars and all the rubber manufacturers. And we used to make the form tools that would cut that little valve that you guys put in there, where they put the air in.
Mm-hmm.
And he was known as being able to hold close tolerances, and he was a very good grinder. And he became known for that in the Cleveland area. And so with that, we grew and we got into more machining. And in fact, what happened is my dad met a man called Henry Grossman, who actually owned Grossman Music at the time in Cleveland. And he was a distributor, and actually he was the gentleman who bought Grover tuners. I think at the time they were being made in Cincinnati. Okay? Mm-hmm. But anyway, to get back to my dad, so then he started and he became a well-known machinist. In fact, I remember being a kid, and if a guy's machine would go down at Dill Manufacturing, my dad would grind a form tool up and have it ready, and he would go down the street and hand it through the window to the guy, the foreman, on second shift so they can keep the machine running.
Wow.
So that's just a little bit of my dad's ingenuity, and there's a funny story my dad told me a long time ago, is way back when they made the Calvinator. Remember the incinerators when you used to burn garbage?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the story he told me is these guys had this thing already made, Calvinator, and they had the pretty housewife lady dressed up and was going to demonstrate this thing. And the poor woman goes to open it, and there's no handle. She goes, how am I supposed to open this thing? So my dad gets the phone call, and he worked 24 hours and came up and made them a handle. And, I mean, he's done things like that. He was involved in the hydraulic door closer that was handled by Sears and Cole Industries. And so that's some of my dad's background. And before that, his uncle and grandfather, they made horseshoes. And when the car came along, they got involved and changed the horseshoe plant into a screw machine outfit. And so that's when my dad learned a lot of cutting tools and the grinding and things like that.
Wow,
and,
that is crazy, man. That is awesome.
And you mentioned the tire, the valve stem valves, for the tires. That's back in the day when everything wasn't completely automated, right? I mean, you're physically making these things.
Yeah, that was when you actually ground by hand. I mean, you had to know how far to move the wheel for 1,000 or 1,500 and still make the product right. And he was very well. Then Dill Manufacturing became Eaton Corporation. That they moved that division down to Roxborough, North Carolina, and we were still doing form tools. We made half-round drill. I mean, we did everything for that company that had to do with Brown and Sharps and Davenport screw machines.
Wow,
that is so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. I never got that involved, but I told you before, my dad was a tool and die maker.
Yeah.
So we were into the the mechanics of it as well. It's just so cool. It's a lost art, man.
Yeah.
And if your dad saw it today, the way these guys see him, it amazed my dad. I mean, my dad unfortunately passed away in 2014, and he was the. And typically, that's not as good as the old way. I mean, as kids and that, we learned how to bump a form tool over 1,000. How to feel with, and it's a lost art. I agree with you. We're called dinosaurs nowadays.
For sure.
Wow, man.
But, yes.
So anyway, to get back how we got into the music, is then we started doing work for Grossman, and when Henry bought the Grover tuner, we started doing the machining on the bodies, the die-cast bodies, and we started making the worm gear and things like that. And there's a whole history there with my dad. And he actually went and back then, I don't know if you recall the Grover Rotomax net. There was like a left hand and a right hand, and that little part that went to meet the button, we used to call that the milk bottle. And so you had to have a left and a right. Well, my dad went to Mr. Grossman and developed a single body, and then we just made a spacer that you would put whatever direction the worm. If you needed a right hand, you put it on that side. If you needed a left hand, you put it on that side.
Oh, wow.
And he developed that for him, and then there was kind of a little misunderstanding, so to speak, and my dad said, well, the heck with it, we'll just go out and make our own.
Wow.
Let's start my own darn company.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, the thing was, my dad, he liked to play the trumpet. I played the drums, and he was into music. And he listened to the problems where, for years, the guitar player was just handed the stuff that was there, and nobody really cared about it. I mean, they were busy. They wanted to sell you a finish and the wood and everything like that. But when it comes to the hardware that makes you enjoy playing that beautiful instrument you just bought, they just didn't do the right thing, put it that way.
Well, I say this a lot, and it gets pushed back. I mean, there's some guys that are so traditional they don't they don't want to hear anything. But it's like the last thing you really should be worrying about is if I bend this G string a step and a half, that when it comes back, the guitar is going to be knocked out of tune. Right. That should be the last. The tuner should not be the thing that created the problem of why you're not in tune, right? You got enough with, especially like your 3+3, Gibson, with the headstock going back and then the string going off on an angle.
Correct.
It's like there's so many places for it to bind just at the nut that you don't need this headache at the tuner.
But I think, that said, years ago, that's the way it was.
Absolutely.
And
that's all you had.
That's all you had.
That's all you had to work with.
And you had to deal with it.
Yeah.
The first thing was putting some pencil lead in the nut. Okay, that fixes it a little bit.
Exactly.
We've all done it.
And now they got graphite oil and all this fancy stuff. But
right.
You're absolutely right. And even today, though, guys, there are guys that will call and say, man, something's wrong with this tuner, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I'll say, or my guitar tech that works here, his name is Roger Marcus, and he's been playing guitar for 35, 40 years.
Nice.
And the first thing he tells them, there's two things, okay? First of all, you got to check and make sure you got enough clearance filed at the back of the nut, because 9 times out of 10, the wound string, especially the G string, like you're saying, will get held up because of the winding, or that nut does not have enough clearance to go off on the angle. And my dad has always said that the reason Gibson went off on an angle and everything is because of the bad tuners that were made back then. And he said the same thing about Leo when he designed them all in line. He tried to end that angle problem, going off to the side.
Sure, yeah.
But then again, that became the design and everything, and things that people were used to. In fact, Roger, the gentleman I told you about that works for us, he was a player. He played in a Leonard Skinner review band, and he went to England and studied under Alan Holdsworth, and he broke. So he says he wishes he had the Les Pauls he broke, because here he thought it was the guitar, and when he met my dad, all along it was the tuner.
Wow.
Well, I can tell you this, and this is where I always have the argument, because I'm like, look, if people go, oh, well, it affects the tone, I'm like, I don't believe that, because, once it gets past that nut, I don't know what kind of action it's doing at that point, right? I mean, the string's definitely not vibrating past the nut as much as it would be, and affecting the tone, especially with the...
Actually, our keys have been known to hold tone better than anybody's.
And, well,
just what you're talking about.
And that has to do with, like, the stainless steel... the actual pin, right? Not the pin that locks it, but the actual tuning peg.
Well, I think it probably has to do with the mass too.
Well,
change
the way
the mass
it's
somewhere.
manufactured. Because we did away with the wobble of the string post.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of, if you take that barrel nut net out of a Grover, or even you can take that post and it'll wobble. I mean, it'll move.
Yeah.
So can you imagine what it does when you're bending or you got a tremolo and you release that tension? That post is going to give, or it's going to let up, and then you're out of tune.
Yeah, see, that's the whole thing. And then what I did was I took my Clusons, right, which were just, and I put them on a scale. And the Sperzels were actually lighter, believe it or not.
That's because we're made out of aluminum. We are not a die-cast cookie cutter.
And now, there's other...
We're actually a machined housing out of billet aluminum.
And see, the other cool part is that I've had them all. So just to let you know, I'm a loyal customer, but I've had them all. And I had the German stuff, the Schaller stuff.
Schaller, yes.
I've had the Grover stuff, and they're die cast. And Germany, they don't do anything in Germany that doesn't weigh the equivalent to a quasar. Like they don't build a car that's light. They don't build anything light. So if you get a set of Schallers, it's like heavy. I mean, it's like over a pound or something.
And then put them on an SG.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's heavy enough.
Yeah, it just goes straight to the floor. Right.
Well, they're and it's and I shouldn't. My dad was German and everything, but. And sometimes they kind of over-engineer everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you got to learn to back off a little bit.
Exactly.
And, I mean, don't get me wrong, they do make a decent product and all. And the whole thing is we went around the other, because my dad has always been one that you give him a problem, and he doesn't look at it like the normal person did. He looks from the other side.
And that's what you got to do.
Say.
Yeah.
And remember, was it the old HP commercial and said that, don't ask why, say, why not?
Yeah,
or why
sure.
can't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that I see, like, they do make a halfway decent tuner, and all the German stuff is, look, it's not bad at all.
No.
But
well, you know what? I had one guy tell me, you know what? He loves going to German hardware stores. He says, if you want wrenches or anything that actually fit, he says, he's like a kid in a candy store, and he goes to a German hardware shop.
Wow.
You get tools that actually work and fit.
Oh, of course. And you're going to pay for it, but...
yeah.
But
you know what? You'll have that the rest of your life.
Exactly.
It's true.
But I will throw out the manufacturers because I've seen the flaws, and one of them was I had a 2006 PRS Standard 22,
Okay.
and that came with a set of Schaller, and I don't know what they're the Mini 22 or the M22, whatever it was, right? But what they did was they took the shaft and they milled it out of brass, and then they drilled a hole through it, but they set a set screw on the top of the tuner peg.
Right.
So the set screw came down from the top of the string, not from the bottom,
as a locking, but
as a locking piece.
Right.
So I was cutting G strings like I was taking the wire cutters right at where the bend was.
Okay.
So then I called PRS and I said, "Hey, I've got a problem here." I said, "Is this a known issue?" And they denied it. And I said, well, what do I do here? I got a tuner that is just snapping the string off like it's being cut. And the kid goes, take some emery paper and go around the hole. And I said, it doesn't matter which side, but I'll do that. And it just kept doing it. So finally, what do? I go out and buy a set of Sperzels and I put it on there. Never broke another string. But what I noticed is that it's like they have the concept, but the design is just
a quick way of
it's just there.
But also, do you remember? I don't know if they still have them. I haven't seen. Remember, he used to have like a cam lock lever.
That's what you have on your.
I have those on my 86s. Yeah. Yes.
And those things are famous for breaking, or not holding tight. And,
yeah, I mean,
that was another design of his. But
it was a very unique idea.
Yes.
Very unique idea, but like with a lot of unique ideas over time, they need to be improved.
Yeah, and you got
to execute it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing that I liked about the Sperzel tuners, and this is just me, was it was the aluminum because it's anodized and you get it like in any color you want, right? So the black was black and it stayed black. It didn't rub off or anything.
With the gold.
Yes.
The gold anodized.
Nice.
The thing is, because anodized is actually etched into the metal a few tenths.
Yes.
And it's actually and that's why you get that deep color and it holds up. Where plating, you guys all know, plating is just a coating. And if you can't hold that coating properly to the tolerances, that can throw off the whole tuning key. Because that's another thing. I remember my dad started, and he just made it what he called like the satin chrome and the black and the satin. He did nothing but anodizing, and because he said, if I have to make a plated key, I'm going to stop. I said, well, Dad, unfortunately, everybody likes the shiny keys, right? And because he said, well, God damn it, it throws off our times. Well, you got to please the public, but so we just allowed for the tolerances, and especially being aluminum. See, the die-cast guys, they can put layers and layers and build up the the plating all they want and make them look nice. But with the aluminum, the process they go through, you have to watch the buildup so you don't get overkill in the holes and everything.
Gotcha.
And that's a trick. And in fact, actually, believe it or not, we have to send to a company out in Denver, Colorado. We've tried everybody around that actually has gotten it down pat. And because we used to have an adhesion problem for a while, where these things would come in and they look beautiful. All of a sudden, the next day I go, Dad, these things are bubbling.
Yeah,
and I said, the plating would actually bubble. So,
chrome
trial and error.
Yeah,
it's tough, and that's like today. Everybody says, "Man, I wish you could make a white one," and I do too because I could probably sell a ton of them. But there again, white is powder coat, and they can't control the thickness.
Right.
And if they could, I'd love it. I mean,
exactly. Well, chrome plating is going away. It's a environmental. It's an environmental hazard.
It's been very difficult to find good chrome plating for probably going on 20 years now.
Exactly. There's only a handful of companies.
Unfortunately, a lot of it is where it's coming from, where they don't worry about EPA and everything else.
No. Right. Or their workers.
Well, that too. I mean, that's why they got such smog and everything. That's why they can't even use their own water. I mean, you got things, you got fish coming out with 3 eyes and 5 fins and everything, I mean. But,
that's a whole other story.
Let's get away from that.
Now, a question that I have that I've heard, and I need to make sure it's correct. The post and the gear are machined out of one piece. Is that correct?
Right. Correct.
See, other posts have a brass gear that's set. There's a set screw that goes up through
it screws it into the post.
But I read an article long ago that you could snap a string, and just from that break, that set screw could come loose.
Oh, because of the shock.
Or through years. Okay, just imagine if you're tuning and detuning, or you put new strings in it. That back and forth, that screw can back off. Plus, the one thing that we have with having an all-one post, our whole post gets chrome-plated or nickel-plated or gold-plated, which adds for longevity. And that, when you put a brass gear against a steel worm, after years, guess what's going to happen? I mean, I don't have to tell you that. Brass against steel.
Yeah, and it just wears down.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Think of a brass nut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go.
You'll kind of
brass is a soft metal.
Yes,
it's
a tone. It's got a good tone to it. But do you really need that in your tuner.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And so anyway, to get back a little bit of history, because is when my dad, we were on the 25th anniversary Strat, and there was a big article by Fender, and I think it was Guitar Player, in 1979 Guitar Player magazine, if you want to look it up, where they did an interview on our key, and they even had it on their flyer. That was the most innovative key at the time. Because what my dad did is we made, and that was when we were non-locking, okay? We started out the non-locker.
Mm-hmm.
But what he did, because he knew the trouble of the winding, okay? So all he did is we drilled the string hole off-center a little bit. So when that string would track, it would actually wind down, okay? Instead of up and over. And that was one of the things, plus the way we made it. We actually have, a zero end play and very minimal backlash.
And that's a key.
And then we started, we did, we were with Martin for a while. We did a lot of pedal steel guys. Emmons guitars, Showbud, we were all on those. Zum steel, pedal steel guitars.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 80s is when my dad patented the locking tuner. And, to this day, I had a little bit with the Schaller people, and in one of their advertising things, they stated they were the first, and I said, well, you show me your patent date, and I'll show you mine. And and my dad, you know what, and I take my hat off to my dad, I would never take the spotlight away from my father. But I've always told people, when a little company in Cleveland, Ohio, develops this, and you got all the big manufacturers that could have looked at this and saw, it says something about you when everybody is in a rush to copy you.
Oh, yeah.
And now we are so copying. I got people today saying, is this your tuner? They send me pictures. I go, the best way to tell if it's our tuner, if it doesn't have our name on it, it's not ours. Because from day one, my dad always put our name on the face of the tuner. And people have said, well, geez, Ron, you're like the Kleenex of the tuning key. And, I don't think of this stuff when, people think of a locking tuner, the first thing they say is Sperzel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
for sure. So the
I know I do.
Even the ones that you had on the 25th anniversary Fender had your name on them. They didn't
had
say
our
Fenders?
name on it. Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the body is, you look at them. I've seen pictures in magazines where the guy's doing something, and it could be anybody, and I look at it and I go, that's a Sperzel tuner.
Yeah.
Because just the body of it has a different look.
And you can tell by the button, too, because that was one thing my dad wasn't going to follow. He, people say, well, it doesn't look like it doesn't look like a Grover button. He says, you know what, I'm not copying. And my dad's come out and say, he says, I'm not copying, button styles, or, he wanted to be known as his own.
Well,
and I got to take my end. It took us 15 years. It took him 15 years of shaking the bushes and everything to get our name out there and get established, Because like you said, people are traditional, and that is one quote. In fact, I think it's even on our website, where my dad has always said, where there's tradition, there's opportunity. We don't drive around in tube tires anymore.
No.
Huh.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, well, not only making a product that lasts all these years, but, like the 25th anniversary Strat, your tuners are lasting way better than the paint on those things. But, wow, that was a whole big mess.
Well, you know what, too? That was experimental. I shouldn't say experimental, but if you remember back then, even the painting back then, they were worried about the lacquers, and the chemistry of painting changed, and what would harden and what would stay. But, that's the whole thing back then is it was a lot. They were in a hurry, and they wanted to get this thing produced. And, sometimes back then you take a shortcut, and it kicks, bites you in the butt. But what are you going to do?
Well,
But anyway, at the NAMM show, even this last year, I got guys coming and they come by, man, I love your stuff. I've had you. In fact, the guy says, I had your keys on my guitar for over 30 years, and they still function great. And I told him, I said, well, if you got the tuners with the star on it, that's how my dad started. He stamped a little star on the locking knob. I said, man, if you got one of those are something to hang on to. And the guy says, man, they still work fine. I had a guy, about a month ago, when we used to make our tuners for Martin, said, man, he just bought this Martin and had our tuners on. He said, can you refurbish them? And because they just from sitting around, they got stiff. I said, yeah, send them to me. We'll take them apart. We'll grease them back up and spin them and get them going for you. And we send them back, and the guy's happy as can be.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah.
And also, about the Grovers too, and that is what my dad corrected. Like that's because machining, but on all of them, if you take Grover, even Godo, Godo makes a good tuner. I got to give him credit. Godo makes a good tuner, and even Scheller. If you notice between that button, they give you a washer and a bowed washer. What happens is that bowed washer takes up any imperfection of that worm or slop in that gear. It makes you feel like you have the tension because there's always pressure from that bowed washer. My dad was always say, you want to find out how good that key is? Take that bowed washer out and put it back together and see what happens.
Yeah.
I would like to hang with your
he
dad.
studied everything. You know what? Everybody that knew my dad, he'd say, man, he's a character. He says, your dad is something. I mean, he's one of those guys that, he loved to talk to. He was, if you guys interviewed him today, you'd be here for 2-3 hours. He's got such history. And when you think of like your fathers, people that were raised back in that generation, that was a phenomenal era in the country. Look what they saw. They saw the automobile. They saw TVs. They saw the airplane. They lived at such a great time when a guy could start out and, like my dad, strike out and say, I'm going to make this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he saw a need and an opportunity, and he wasn't even a guitar player.
Mm-mm.
No, he played the trumpet. I played the drums, but
right.
but he was interested in it, and he saw the flaws that were in the other tuners, and he heard these guys saying it. And I remember my dad, and this was funny back then. He would take a guitar to like these bars. I remember going with him. I was underage at the time, but anyway. We'd go to a bar, and he'd go up to the guitar player. He says, here, you try this guitar. He says, I'll give you $50 if you can knock it out of tune. And, man, $50 to the guitar player in a bar,
Yeah.
And they could not do it. And my dad would say, the guy goes, it's out of tune. He goes, okay, put your meter on it and let me know.
Wow.
But you know what? Them guys could do that, and they were like that, And for a man, I give my dad, for a man who never went to college for engineering, I would put him toe-to-toe with the best one out there. He worked with Ken Parker when they developed the Parker Fly.
Get out of town.
No, this guy was one of the engineers was filling out, had this form he was giving the answer to, and so my dad was watching it, and this guy's on the computer, and my dad goes, here's the answer. The guy looks and goes, what?
You know what? I totally forgot that
he was a math genius, I have to admit.
Wow.
I totally forgot. The original Parker Flies came with Sperzel tools.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ken Parker. Him and Ken Parker worked hand in hand. And Larry Fishman. They were all involved.
Nice.
Because the Fishman, the bridge saddles had the acoustic saddles in that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy hell, man. How about that?
There you go. Well,
now, we got to talk about the new ones.
I was going to say, since you've taken over, Ron, you've taken over the reins. How do you see?
Well, me and I have a brother that's here too. He came back in, and he's retired from his other job, and he helps out with the machining and the tooling in that reins, and gives me free time to do the other stuff. So
how have you seen the company change in recent years, and what's come of new with you guys?
Well, the thing that has changed is, first of all, and which everybody has, labor is a problem, and getting people to come to work and everything like that. But as far as the company changes, my dad was old school, and he wouldn't buy into kind of new technology, which I've been trying to introduce.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're getting along that way. And the new product we came out with, my dad tried for years, he never finished, was a direct replacement for the vintage tuners.
Yeah, man.
And we have now one that comes with the plate. It's got our engineering. Everything is the same. We make the gears the same. We make the worm gear, everything. It's the same technology that's in the trim lock, only we transferred it into where these guys, and what I did is I studied through Warmouth, who makes vintage replacement necks that's licensed by Fender.
Yep.
And we got the body size and the hole sizes that are in the headstock, and we've just retooled and made our tuners fit where, these vintage guys, they don't even, if they don't want to, they don't even have to knock that little grommet out.
Get out
all
of
they gotta do
town.
is take their tuners out, and ours will fit right in and go right in through the grommet, but yet it's still put together our same way with the one-piece string post, and the tuning ability and stability is there. Plus, what I did is, if you remember the old Clusons and that, where the worm gear stem with the little plastic button would come out, and always have, if the guy drops his guitar, bumped it, and bend that stem, it would cock the worm. It would actually expand the stamping, and the whole gear was just loose as hell and was shot. Well, see now ours are made the same way the trim lock. What I did is we made a little spacer that looks vintage, and it's hard to tell, but it supports that's worm stem. In fact, at the show, I don't know if you saw the video. I think the gentleman on YouTube I've heard from everybody is that the name of the guy was the company was Texas Toast, and he interviewed me there. And what I did is I took the neck that had our tuners, and I showed everybody. And I just whacked it on the table. I said, "Here, I'll tell you," and it still works.
And he did.
Nice.
And also we developed what we call the Magnum Fine Tuner. Is we made now a button that, how should I explain over the phone? It looks like a barrel, and it's got a couple knurls on it.
Yep.
But it is great for 6 and even 12 string guys. I mean, you know how their fingers, you're forever bumping the other tuner as you tune.
Looks like an
I mean,
LSR
ergonomically, this thing is really nice, and because it's got the knurls on it, I mean, you can really peg your dial when you're tuning. I mean, you have such control.
Yeah.
With this new button.
It looks like an LSR tuner, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of, right.
But when you get an
but I've
LSR
got our own
tuner,
little spin on it.
yeah, when you get an LSR tuner, you have to go take a course at Harvard to learn how to use it, because it's not a tuner, as like there's no gear in there, but it has a 40-to-1 ratio, but yet you have to, it's the most confusing thing I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
It actually pulls the string through the headstock.
Right.
Yeah.
And that we in fact we've been working on, believe it or not, we've been working on having a down pull. See what happens with those, and like even with who was the other gentleman? Engineering made it.
Steinberg?
Steinberg.
Ned Steinberg.
The trouble with that is you had limited, pull down. So you had, it was almost like the old safety posts with Fender. You had to cut the string to length and hope to God you cut it long enough or not too short, or you throw away the string. And that's why with what we call our sound lock or slotted string post that we make now, and this is another new thing, is you take the string, and it's like you take the string and you pull it all the way through. You take it down right down the center of the post. You pull it out the other end. You take the slack out, and then you take your string and you go over the slot and under the lip in the direction of the post. And within one full turn, the string is locked. It's more like a friction lock than the trim lock is like the Cadillac, but it still serves. It locks the string to the post. And I mean, we have videos on that also, how to use the sound lock, we call it. But for the vintage guys, I'm just calling it the slotted, because they're used to the slotted look from the vintage Fenders.
Yeah.
And but we, like I said, and we got the plate that goes on. We give them the screws, and in fact, we got all models to cover. Even when Schaller started making vintage replacements, because he was a die-cast guy, he did the barrel, the nut, held down with the nut and washer. Well, and the plate. So we offer both flavors. I mean, you can do it the old one to replace the ones with the grommet, or if you have a Schaller one on there that has the barrel nut and washer, our barrel nut and washer will fit. So we've tried to cover all the bases.
And the
with
key,
this new vintage key.
And the key thing is no pun intended, but the number one thing is you don't have to ream the post holes on your vintage guitar. And
no, you don't have to.
You don't have drill holes.
Same thing with the Les Paul guys.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to touch their, and I don't, nobody. It's like even that's the hardest point in selling our tuner to the Les Paul guys because, oh my God, they don't want to drill that hole. So that's why we developed that easy mount where they don't have to drill for that pin. And what happens is we have a couple little prongs that are side by side. And when you tighten your tuner on your headstock with the barrel nut and washer, the prongs actually sink into the wood and keep it from turning. In fact, before we put it on the market, we did a test run here with a maple fender neck, and I mean, we shook this thing, we threw it on the ground, I mean, and they hold. I mean,
they're always banging stuff around over there.
Well, you got to give it the road work. I mean, these things get thrown in guitar cases and everything else, and that's another thing with that new button, the Magnum, is when you bring it up to the show that when a guy goes to put it in his case. Because you know how it is, like that button may not be the same way one to another. Like one may be facing one way, one may be the other.
Sure.
And sometimes when you put it in a case, if you bump them, well, it's going to be out of tune. Well, this thing here is round and it clears. And I mean, even I learned even guys at the trade show in NAMM were introduced to it. This one guy comes up and he goes, "Hey, fat fingers, no problem."
Because I guess that's something you got to worry about.
They're made for Johnny Highland.
There you go. Exactly.
So yeah, well, we're moving forward. We have a couple other things we're working on. Like I said, we're going to try and come up with our version of the Ned Steinberg tuner, and because we get hounded by guys with Firebird guitars that want to. Now we have replaced. I tell them you can use our tuners because one thing with our flexibility is we make 3 lengths of worm gear stems, and then we did that when we worked with Yamaha because I forget what series it was where they made a guitar where the tuners, because of our capability of machining, they didn't go off on an angle, which means they lined up the tuner with the nut and the string, so it went straight through the nut to the tuner, and it didn't go off on an angle to get that hang up.
And you had to make different, what is it, a
heights,
post?
I guess,
post
heights, yeah.
Well, no, the housing was the same. What we did is the stem on the worm gear that sticks out. Okay. We made longer. We made 3 different lengths, and plus then we made the spacers different lengths, and we offer it to people today who want to try and put them on a Jaguar guitar and a Firebird.
I see.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because as a traditional Firebird, a regular tuner won't work. You have to use banjo type.
Exactly.
Tuners. Right.
Exactly.
And they're horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know because I keep getting asked when you guys are going to come on. And I said, well, we got it on the table,
Yeah,
so,
they're tough to get used to.
We got some.
Yeah.
We got some new things. Some irons in the fire, and like I said, we had one of the best teachers out there. My dad taught us a lot and how to think and what to look at, and and here's a point, guys, is that a lot of people don't know is we've developed what we call a NILOC, locking classical tuner. It's like a swivel lock. And speaking of tradition, I mean, I've showed this thing at NAMM and these Spanish guitar players, and you know what it is. Did you guys ever restring a classical guitar?
Hate it.
Yeah.
You know what a pain in the butt.
Absolutely.
You just want to put an axe through it.
People don't restring them or change the strings because it's that much of a pain.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's right up there for me. It's right up there with the Bigsby. With a Bigsby. God, I hate doing that.
Yeah, well, you know what? Brian Setzer met my dad, and he told my dad. In fact, we're on Brian Setzer's original 59 that he picked up when he was a kid.
Yeah, they are.
And he has a set of our tuners on it. And he says, with the Bigsby tremolo, you need Sperzel locking tuner. That's the only way to keep that thing in tune.
Even that signature model that they offered for a short period of time,
they're on it?
Oh,
nice.
hell yeah, man.
Nice.
It's the only way to fly.
Well, it should be if it's a signature model.
Yeah, but how it is.
Yeah. And so anyway, this classical tuner, and here again, we're fighting tradition. Because, these guys don't tie it the way the way back Glenn did it. You're not as good as they are. If you can't do that, you're not a classical musician. It's like, oh boy. But can you imagine how many, and a lot of young kids start with a classical guitar.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Can you imagine how many more kids would get interested or or would love to play it if it wouldn't be such a pain in the butt to restring this thing. And it works the same way our trim lock does. You put the string in the hole, you pull it all the way through, and what you do is when you start tuning, we have like real fine knurls on the nylon, okay? Because and what that does is that little knurl bites in, and it grabs that string, and once that swivel turns and puts a kink in the string, it's locked in. And you don't have half the wraps that you do on your normal classical guitar.
Man,
I've showed us that, and some of these Spanish guys, they look, but they won't take that foot off the dock, They just won't. They got one foot on the boat and one foot on the dock, and they don't know what to do.
But it's like that's something you don't even think about, like somebody addressing, the Spanish guitar market, the classical guitar market.
Look, it's all I say is why do you want to be spending that time doing that thing when there's a solution that virtually almost eliminates that, and you can actually do that thing called play.
Now, you know what? And that's exactly the whole point my dad had said, is that, he made it so people can enjoy playing their instruments. It's like I told you before. You get this $3,000 guitar. I don't even care if it's a $300 guitar. You get a kid or a professional, that actually enjoys, you can actually play instead of worrying about tuning. And like I said, Roger here that plays locally, he tells, in fact, the people he plays in a band, he looks at the guy that, they got to wait for him to tune up and he says, you know what, why don't you get a set of these already? And because he says he can tune his guitar up before a gig, put it in the bag, take it home, go back the next day, and that guitar is still being tuned. And a guy didn't believe it until he put it on the meter and showed him.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Look, I did it forever.
It makes you, well, you know what? And that's like, I met Dallas Shoes, who was the guitar tech for U2.
Right.
Okay.
For the Edge.
Yeah. And he said, if the Edge should break a string on stage, he can have the thing down in the pit, restrung, and tune, and back up before the next song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Well, yeah.
And actually, those are the guys who love us, are the guitar techs.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And Jeff Beck, we met him, my dad's, and you know how hard Jeff Beck plays.
Yeah.
And if your tuners can keep him in tune, it says something right there. In fact, we saw him play at the the Hard Rock Cafe here in Cleveland, and he played one guitar all night, and it was a yellow guitar, his yellow Fender, and never once did he retune that thing. He played it all night.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Wow. I mean, he
and Jeff Beck, how hard he plays. That was a true test for my dad when he went and met him.
He does those little flutters on the whammy, but then he'll smack the whammy too, and he's constantly pulling
he pulls the shit out of it too.
Up on it all the time,
Oh yeah, if you look at that thing, it doesn't even look like it sits right because it's actually like pitched forward.
Well, yeah, but he's got this little shorter, different bend arm on it too, which is. You got to have if you're going to try to play like him.
Yeah, that allows you to pull a whole step the other way.
Right, then you got to try 30 years to play like him. But,
and that's another thing that we have. But anyway, to get back to the Nylock classical tuner, I met Spanish players and guys from Mexico, and I have a guitar on display that has this on them, a classical. Man, these guys pick this thing, they'll play it, and they'll play it, and I go, what do you think? He goes, oh, man, these are great. But to try and get them to break into it is another story. But anyway, it'll come. I've tried to contact some manufacturers, and they tell you, that's just, they'll never understand it. What's so hard to understand of putting the string through and turning it?
It's harder to understand how to string it the way it is now.
Oh, man, the way you got to go back and loop through here and then loop through this one and go under this one. Oh, my God.
Well, I think once you break that market, you're going to be able to make the Stradivarius lock.
There you go.
Those guys, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I look at it
they're another egg of their own kind. So
once I jumped in the deep end of the pool, I was like, "Well, I'm never going back to the other side."
Why didn't I do this before? Yeah.
Because
and thank you so much. That's a testament to my dad.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good American, and we're all American made. Everything is made right here in Cleveland, Ohio.
That's huge.
West 150th Street and Industrial Parkway. And in fact, I mean, we don't outsource anything. I mean, the plating is done in the States.
Oh, that's
the plating,
awesome.
some of it is done here in the city, and our anodizing is done in the States. I mean, we don't job it out anywhere. So everything is made right here.
That is
in the U.S. of A.
And you know that's a difficult thing to say today.
It's very difficult to do today.
Look, the car that you drive, the Chevy, there's parts that came out of Canada and Mexico, and you know, and to have that company 100% here, well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
well, you know what, guys, and that's something I tell people. I says, you know, it's harder and harder to stay American made because, you know, I can't compete with the labor wages over there. I just can't. I mean, you know, our people like to eat food. They like to live in either an apartment or a house.
Sure.
They like to drive a car.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they have to have health insurance. I mean,
and these are not these people aren't flipping burgers. These have to have skills.
Yeah, they're machines.
These have to be skilled
exactly.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me tell you,
Right,
I don't know how you do it, but your tuners are very competitive. Actually, a little bit better price than some of the other versions
sometimes
out there.
my bean pounder punches me in the head once in a while. You know?
Well,
and,
I tell you what, I know it's
but we're
a
making
good tuner.
it. You know, my dad is. You'd be, you know, we were approached by, you know, by the Chinese many times and everything. But you know, and you know, my dad would just not sell out. He was a World War II veteran, and
awesome.
American made means a lot to him. And as much as you know, I could make gazillions, but you know what? This was my father's history and our heritage, and I won't sell out either. I mean, if the day comes when I do have to give up the reins or sell it, you know, I would hope to God they stay American made. You know, but
well,
that's down the road. I'm not
good. And I mean, for me, that really speaks to my heart. I am all about that. You know,
sure,
I told you that.
I mean,
I wouldn't
you know
ever
what,
do anything
guys?
like that either. You know, so
I take risks with people, and I learned this from my dad. You know, we'll hire a guy. And I had this one kid that kept bugging me about, Ron, I need a job. You know, and of course he had a little record. He had a felony record, and you know, we take a chance. But you know what? Those people turn out, you know, they'll work for you. I mean, they will really work. When you show a kid how to work with his hands in a trade, the right kid, I mean, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, we'll say, wow, you know, and I even tell you can make some of yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And I says, you know, and I tell my people here, even my assembly girls, and I says, you know what? I says, yes, that tuner has our name on it, but people that get this, you know what? But you make it, and people will say, well, who, you know, yeah, it has our name, but it takes workers to make this thing.
Sure.
And, you know, I treat them right, and I do a lot of, you know, little stuff for them, and I bring them donuts here and there, you know, once a week and stuff, and just, but you know what, guys, it's that I won't give in, and I don't know, maybe some people think you're nuts, but you know what, the country's got to be strong, and I believe in it, and you know, and the proof's in the pudding, so to speak. I mean, like I said, we were trained by my dad, who was an excellent machinist, and we learned the trade, and we know how to hold close tolerances, and even if some of our machinery is old, but we got them working up to the rate and everything, and
that's
you know,
awesome.
it's a fun industry, but yet it can also be a headache, you know, too. So
for sure.
when you're trying to get something out, and people, it's hard to get them to see the advantage of it.
You know, and that's, you know, I can't applaud this enough.
No.
Personally, I cannot applaud this enough.
Thank
but
you.
and the thing is that you're starting to see some things come back now. You really are. It's like they're not having good experiences, or they realize that it can be done here if it's done in such a way. But you're starting to see things come back now.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I keep telling like younger people all the time, it's like, learn a trade.
Yeah.
You can't. I don't know where you go to learn to be a machinist anymore. It's quite honestly, but learn a trade.
Everything's CNC. You know,
right? It's all CNC, and you know what? Still, fantastic. Do that. Be a plumber. Be an electrician.
Be a welder.
Be a HVAC guy. Welders. You know, because that's the kind of stuff you can't outsource. You know, when your water heater blows up, you're not calling China.
No.
Yeah,
You know?
true.
No.
You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
And you know what? That's like here. The worst thing they did was close down a technical school, and that's where kids went Just what you're talking about. Whether it was horticulture, like you said, plumbing, electricity. I mean, electricians and that. I mean, that's and the whole country. You know, you kind of missed the boat in getting written. You know, not everybody is cut out for college, and not everybody can work on a computer. Unfortunately, you know, sometimes the guys that work with their hands are just as important as anybody on a computer.
Oh my God, yeah,
absolutely.
Because look at the automobile. You know, you can't work on that yourself anymore like you used to. I mean,
oh no.
And those kids go and they learn the trade. But you guys are absolutely on the right. I mean, you know what? That's what this country is. Get back to teach these kids a trade.
Yeah,
right.
Well, Mike Rowe, who is from our state.
Oh yeah, he's a huge proponent.
He is a huge proponent of it. And the thing is that, you know, there's like 100,000 jobs right now that they need: welders, electricians, plumbers.
Sure.
And they can't find them.
Right. They can't fill the job.
They can't fill the job. So it's, you know,
well,
and there's something visceral about working with your hands.
Absolutely.
It really
well,
is.
You know what? And there's, well, you know what? Because when you see the finished product, it's like, wow, I did that.
Yes.
You know, and that's what he's got to get in these kids. And it's just like, you know, okay, you hear everybody, you know, infrastructure. Okay, how many people out there can drive an earth mover?
Yeah,
You know,
not
you
many.
can't take a guy off the street and throw him on an earth. I mean, good luck. I mean, dump trucks. I mean, it's all, you know, people think truck drivers, it's not an art. I can't back in a 53-footer into our dock. I'd be all over the goddamn.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, you know, you just use that word infrastructure. They want to start to rebuild the infrastructure in this country. You know, the roads, the bridges, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Hell yeah,
you
man.
know, you don't phone that in. You don't work online to do that.
No, you don't.
You get out there and you get it done.
You got to dig a hole sometimes.
And if you can do that, somebody's going to pay you really well to do that.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Ron, how many people do you have working for you, man?
Well, we have 10 people working at the time right now.
Wow.
And
wow, you put out that much product?
That is so cool.
Holy
I mean,
crap.
we could do more. I mean, you know, but you know, people don't realize when you call in an order or they send me over the email. I mean, every order is made by hand because some of these with especially like with the color combinations we got now, and you know, we got a set called the Tutti Frutti where every part on the tuner is a different key: the spacer, the body, the knob, the button. I mean, and I tell them they can go as wild as they want, or you know, as plain as they want. But I mean, these girls here. I mean, we're like Harley Davidson. Everyone is made by hand.
Nice.
I mean,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, man.
That is beautiful.
So,
and
like you said,
I was just going to
like
say,
you guys that play. That's like I told you in the beginning. It's I know it's repetitious, but that is what my dad got involved for, because you know what? It's the people who play that instrument really enjoy our labor. You know, they really enjoy the work of that tuning machine.
Yeah, that means a lot, and it should mean a lot to the people that actually have the talent to do it.
And it should be the last thing that you have to think about when you play guitar.
Exactly.
Right. And you make bass tuners too, correct?
Make bass tuners, and we make that drop D thing.
Yes, you do.
And that's nice because you know it's integrated into our tuning key, and it's not like the hip shot where you know they give you that big massive thing and you got to flip the bass and everything. Ours is right on the worm gear, and
it is.
It's just you know you tune the D, and we got these fine adjustment screws and this thing called the flipper, and you lock it in place once it's to D, and then you take the flipper and you move it, and you can self adjust to drop down to the E, or take the E to the D, and it comes right back. I mean, we show this thing at a trade show, and some guys on the sample guitar, man, you know, I mean, they even play like a whammy. They'll take that thing and they'll flip it, you know, back and work it, and you can hear the different sound thing. But the D thing we make, and we make it for both the guitar and the bass.
So I want to tell all of our manufacturer guys out there, all the guys that are building guitars here in the U.S.
Oh yeah,
definitely just take a look, and I guarantee you, you're going to enjoy these more than the other companies that you're dealing with.
See the advantage in using them.
Well, the other thing is too is that, you know, not to put the other companies down, but you don't know who you're dealing with, and you got to get it shipped from somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's not like you can go to Ohio and pick them up. You know, you gotta. It's got to come from Germany or Japan or China. You know, and let me tell you, go on eBay and type the word "locking tuner," and you're going to find some crap.
Yeah, that's true. And I had one guy he tried to. He took some guy sold him a set, and they took some, I don't know who makes it, this Dragonfly guy or whatever, and they put him in our box. And I said, man, you know, on eBay, I always tell people, buyer beware.
Yeah,
you know, because those people on there, they'll peddle anything. And I said, I hate to tell you this, but those aren't our tuners. I said, you can tell our tuner that all of them have our name on it.
It's manuscript written into the housing on the back of it, right by the thumb screw.
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly right. And but yeah, it's crazy out there, and everybody tries to make a living. But you know, and a lot of the guitar manufacturers, unfortunately, I mean, you know, they've gone the lower route, so to speak, or the less expensive, and you know, but and there again, that's what do you want, and what do you want to give these kids, you know? And 9 times out of 10, these guys, when they get, you know, they end up buying us in an aftermarket type thing. You know,
yeah,
so.
sure. That's me. That's what I do.
Yeah,
right.
And I put them on everything. I have a Big Baby Taylor. This is a $350 guitar. I stuck a set of Sperzels on there because, like I said, I'm the laziest person on the planet when it comes to putting this stuff. I don't want to learn that math where you go under and then you got to flip it over and then around and then back. It's like, no, I just want to pull it through, run this little thumb screw up.
And you want to play, exactly.
Hack the string off and then give it a half a turn and you're good.
Right.
I don't understand why people argue with that. That kills me.
I don't, because sometimes maybe it's too simple for them. I don't know.
This is, you know, I'm not a big technology guy, but this is technology I love using.
I just don't understand it.
You know?
And
it's understandable.
Right, exactly.
And it's like he says, it's the Cadillac of tuners.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're getting an American-made product.
Yes. That's huge for me.
That's big.
Huge.
You know, granted,
and you know
some guy in Australia may not look that way, but who cares? Hey,
but he's still getting the most quality product.
That's right.
Well, but you know what? I sell to people in Australia, and you know they but I got to pay duty. And I said, well, I'm sorry you live in Australia. I mean, what am I supposed to do? and I mean, and that's another thing. I don't know if I should tell you guys or you want to air this with, but you know, I've heard, and I'm sure you guys have, is like a lot of this stuff. In fact, like Yamaha and them, I've heard through the grid that there are certain preferred countries out there that don't pay any duty on the stuff. And I mean, put us on a level playing field. But you know, you imagine the billions of the U.S. could have if these countries were made to pay duty, and that's why this stuff goes to Walmart and everything.
Oh,
you know, and they come in big containers, and that's just like our furnaces and stuff. I mean, I know a guy that his dad started a furnace company when the furnaces used to be made in America, and he says, try and get a part for a furnace. He says, you'll wait months.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's a really hard situation to be in to make an American product and try to afford to keep it American made and affordable and get on a level playing field with everything else that's out there. It's really, really difficult, man. And my hat's off to you.
Well, and let's hope our listeners take a look and maybe, you know, buy a set.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, it's not a huge investment.
Give
Go
us
out and buy a
drop
set.
us an email, you know, and
right.
Yeah.
We'll have the website up on the web page.
That's right.
And it will live in
perpetuity.
That's right. And definitely check them out. I'm telling you, you're not going to. Here's the thing. I can safely say you won't hate it.
No. What's
what's nice about you guys is what you're telling these people. I mean, you guys are a player. I mean, you've been through the other stuff, you know.
Right.
And I'm, you know, I'm not paying you to say you guys know because you've experienced it. You know,
I've been through hell with tuners. Believe me.
That's like I said, that Roger that worked with us. He said, "Man, he wishes he had the Les Pauls that he broke."
Right. Yeah, that's such a sad thought. That is such a sad thought.
Yeah.
Well, you know, now you can get a direct drop-in set, and you don't have to worry about that nonsense anymore.
Right.
Same thing. Yeah, I mean, we make them for Gibson, we make them for Defender. I mean, anybody, and like I said, these vintage guys, because a lot of people, you know, they don't want to even knock that grommet out to take a chance of cracking the finisher or whatever. I mean, they don't even have to remove the grommet.
That's awesome.
Might as well just fit. I mean,
I did
it right here. In fact, the neck I did it on, and the one I had at the show that I hit again was a Blackie neck that we had.
Jesus.
You know?
Wow.
You know, there's cheaper samples out there, Ron.
Well,
Yeah, but
This guy that played it, he changed it because I mean, you should have seen the fingerboard. I mean, this guy was a puller, and oh my God, I mean, it looks like he must not never cut his fingernails in years or whatever. But anyway, I mean, he had roots dug into this thing. So that's why he said, "Here, yeah, you need it." He says, "Go ahead, use it." And,
Will you be at Summer NAMM?
I'm thinking of going because of the new products, but I may just show up and just walk around and introduce and show people the tuners. You know,
We never know
we'll
what
see how
we're
those
doing, so if we're there, we're going to have to search you out, man.
Yeah, fine.
For sure.
Listen, also, but you know, I've heard from these guys that have been calling me about the vintage. They said there's a show in Dallas, May 5th through the 7th, and they're telling me that's where he says, man, he says that show, everything and anything is there. He says that is a big. He says it's almost like a mini NAMM.
It's got to be the Dallas Guitar Show. It's been going on. It's been going on for decades. It's huge. It's the biggest one. It's huge.
Really?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I'm really thinking of going. I'd like to go and experience that. That's because there's two of them, right? There's the Dallas show, and then after that, there's one I think in in Arlington, Texas. But that's more like a strictly vintage.
Yeah. I think the Dallas is the bigger
like
one.
a flea market type thing, you know.
Go in there and piss those guys
Stop
off.
and swap or whatever.
Yeah, let me change the tuners on that 58 Strat.
Well, here's the thing. And this is the part that I wanted to tell. Hey, look, if you have something that's really rare and vintage, but, you know, you don't want to ruin it, you take them off, you put them in a box, right?
Exactly.
And then you put his on there, and you can play it like it's a brand new guitar. And then when if you want to sell it or you want to put it, you just take them off and you put the old ones back on.
Absolutely.
It's not like you're destroying the guitar.
Right. No,
you're
that's
absolutely correct.
You know,
that's been that whole concept has been thought through
exactly
and well executed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if
Thank
you're going
you.
to play the thing, especially if it's got a whammy
Enjoy
on
it.
it, if you're going to play the thing, you know, like a vintage Strat, this is going to help you play in tune
and
better.
Here's my
You
whole.
got this beautiful vintage instrument with the seasoned wood, and that people don't get anymore. You know, they can say retro made. It's not the same wood that they used to make. It's nowhere near it. But you can tell by the tone and the weight, and I mean, and just the sound of that thing.
Yeah.
You know, and so why not get the enjoyment out of it? Like you said, you can always put the other stuff back on.
I look
if
at it
you
like
want to sell it or whatever.
Like a hot rod, like a resto mod.
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Like it looks like the original thing, but the chassis underneath of it's nice and shiny, and you can go around a turn without looking like you're washing the windshield.
And good and useful.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
you may actually
you
make
don't
it
have
to
wood,
the
you don't have wood rims anymore, or two tires and tubes in them.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
You know, you arrive to your destination alive.
Safely.
Or in this case, in tune.
In
so
tune.
There you go.
There you go.
So we're going to leave this whole podcast in tune. And,
That's right, man.
And
Yeah.
Ron, thank you so
Well, you
much
know
for
what,
taking
guys?
the time, man.
One more thing.
Sure.
You know, you came up with a thing about the cars, and you know what? And you sit, and I love that new Cadillac commercial. There are cars, and there's a Cadillac. You know, and I've been thinking of you saying, you know, there's tuning keys, and then there's Sperzel.
There you go.
There you go, man.
I love it.
I'll leave you with that, gentlemen.
I love it. Well, Ron, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
You're more than welcome anytime. This has been a great experience, and I hope it works out.
I can't thank you enough for being American made, personally.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
Keep fighting the good fight, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Yep, we will. Yep,
All right.
it's in our blood.
Good, man.
Well,
Good.
thank you so much for the time, gentlemen, and I hope this does well for you.
Thank you very much, man. Have a great rest of the evening. And there you have the Sperzel story.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I know I'm over the top, but I can't help it. I can't help it. I've been using them for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And they have never failed. Yeah. Never. I've never had an issue. What do you say to that?
Well, what do I say on top of that is, and for me, I can't get enough of this, still American made.
Yeah.
With people that have talent and you know, have a skill and a career in making something by hand that it's a quality product and people appreciate, man. For me, that gets it for me. And I know that they're incredible tuners as well. So
yeah, and it's one of those things. Everybody talks about this tradition thing, right? And it's like, well, okay, look, man, this guy has traditionally kept his company manufacturing in the same spot after what his dad did.
Right.
And what more could you want right there?
You know, I mean, you got a vintage Les Paul or a vintage Strat. You know, if you're gonna upgrade it so that you can play it, so that it's a better tool for you, you couldn't put anything better on than an American-made product on an American-made guitar. And
you're not going to find anything that's going to drop in there.
Right, not like that.
No.
Yeah. They did a lot of thinking about this. So it's very cool. It's very cool. Good on you, Ron.
Yeah, man. Guess what I'm getting?
More of them?
Yeah, I'm going to put some more on mine.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
When I saw him come out, it was like I got a little tingle.
I am too.
Yeah.
I'm starting to
appreciate it.
Not want to live without them. Yeah.
I tell you what, it's sort of like what is it? It's like when back in the day before high speed, when high speed cable came out. And everybody was like, yeah, whatever. As soon as you got
it.
Yeah. It was like when it turned off or it wasn't working that day, you were like, I'm going to die. And you never wanted to go back to dial-up.
I was going to say, yeah. Once you leave dial-up, you can't go back.
You just can't. No.
Yeah.
So until next time, my friend.
That's right.
We're going to be in tune. I'm Mick Marcelino.
And I'm Jeff Bober, and I'm getting there.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.